I move the Sinn Féin motion. I note the government's 11th hour intervention that they have decided to defer the planned road toll increases for 6 months. It's clear as day that the government have been bounced into this decision as a direct result of political and equally important, probably more importantly, public pressure in relation to this. A huge public response to this crazy proposal. The Department of Transport was notified of these toll increases 3 full months ago on September 1st, yet it took until today to get any action from government, just hours before this Sinn Féin motion calling on the toll increases to be stopped. As early as this morning, it was being reported that a decision wouldn't be made until closer to the new year. So it's welcome action, but it doesn't go far enough. The government's announcement doesn't solve the problem. It only serves to kick the can down the road, and it fails to provide the certainty required by families, and it doesn't address the underlying problems. There seems to be no recognition whatsoever that we're living in a crippling cost of living crisis, and workers, hauliers and businesses are really struggling with transport costs. So it's now proposed that the tolls will increase instead next summer, at a time when petrol and diesel prices have gone back up due to the expiration of the excise relief, and just before the government hike fuel prices yet again with their annual carbon tax increase. This proposed toll increase will add €8 million to the operating costs of hauliers in the second half of 2023. It will heap additional costs on workers and families who have no alternatives. In recent days, I've been contacted by hauliers to the pin of their collar and in real concern that their businesses will go to the wall. I've been contacted by people who have to travel for dialysis 6 times a week on a disability payment, increasing costs of petrol and diesel, and have to make the commute through the tolls, and putting them under very severe financial pressure. And it's completely unacceptable that government would let this situation get to this point. Minister Ryan buried his head in the sand on this issue and simply hoped it would go away. But he can show interest in toll roads, and has in the past when it suited him. In opposition, he called for electric vehicle owners to pay no tolls at all. But when it comes to ordinary motorists or commercial operators or people driving a white van or a lorry who can't afford an EV or don't have an EV option, he has no interest at all. This entire saga highlights how generous these gold-plated Fianna Fáil-era road toll contracts are, and further how poorly successive governments have invested in roads maintenance and upkeep. The PPP contracts seem to be a win-win-win for the private contractor involved. The M3 operator made €11 million in profits last year. That company gets paid millions, if not enough cars use the road. Their tolls go up with inflation, and the state is locked into these contracts literally for decades. It's literally a cash cow. On the M50, earlier I was reading an Irish Times article from 2010 which highlighted that the government didn't know how much the private company behind the M50 project had originally invested in the project before agreeing to a deal which would ensure this private company received €1.15 billion return on its investment. You literally couldn't make it up. It's expected the private company partnered in the Limerick tunnel project will receive payments of €200 million over the lifetime of the project due to lower than expected traffic volumes. These toll contracts are a relic of the Fianna Fáil cowboy era of poor planning and financial incompetence. Motorists are still paying the price for this. TII are to tell the Transport Committee this evening that the M50 and Port Tunnel raised €200 million annually for them, that they use that money to maintain the national road network. They say that just €400 million is provided by the department, 2% of asset value, nowhere near what's needed. So M50 motorists are paying for the upkeep of roads across this country because the government have failed to put a proper, sustainable plan in place. And that's what you need to do over the next 6 months, Minister.
I'd like to speak to a particular issue in regarding to tonight's P&B, and that's the use of the public-private partnerships in large public infrastructure projects. PPP have frequently been used for large road infrastructure and in social housing, healthcare and education, and today they represent an €11 billion liability for the state. The PPP's model of delivery often promised that it would bring great benefits. Benefits including better value for money, accessing private finance, greater efficiency from private sector management, risk transfer, whereby risks from delays and cost overruns transfer to the private investor. However, these supposed benefits frequently just don't materialise. Not only that, but often the additional costs are left with the public. And in our experience, this experience has mirrored the disappointing results elsewhere. And as a result, PPPs have attracted a bad reputation. And a 2018 study by the EU Court of Auditors found that PPPs frequently produce considerable delays, major cost increases and had weak transparency. And research by economists Owen Reeves and Donald Palchik, by housing expert Rory Hearn, former Chief Economist of ICTU, Paul Sweeney, indeed the Controller and Auditor General, had similar findings. And we also often see aggressive tax avoidance occur through the use of SPVs and holding company structures and creative accounting. And I'll give a concrete example. The PPP for the M4 motorway. In 2014, the company that carried out the work changed how its turnover was reported. It moved from measuring turnover on the basis of toll revenue and other payments to, I quote, to a profit margin on operating costs incurred for the year and a return on the financial asset of the company based on future cash flow projection. And in one fell swoop, this halved it lowered its reported turnover from 29.5 to 21.2 and more than halved its corporate tax bill. But nevertheless, PPPs remain a part of the NDP and a key part of housing for all. So those are the major concerns. But just in relation to the issue of the tolls, and Minister, we're in the same constituency and we would often have to go through those tolls. And I heard Minister Ryan at the weekend say that 10 cent isn't a lot of money, but 10 cent is a huge amount of money when we see all the bills rise and rise and rise. 10 cent then is considerable.
Thank you, Deputy Brian Stanley.
Thanks, Mr. Cahora. I welcome the news. I want to welcome the news that toll increase across the 8 public-private partnership roads and the M50 will be deferred until July 2023. However, this doesn't go far enough, Minister. Workers and families across the state are in a cost of living crisis, and the government's only solution is to kick the can down the road to July. The Minister for Transport was notified in early September prior to the budget of these price hikes and decided to do nothing about it. Now, following the Sinn Féin motion to scrap the toll increase, the government has changed its position under public pressure. The entire saga highlights the risk to the taxpayer of public-private partnerships and how the financial recklessness of past Fianna Fáil governments is coming back to trouble us again. Due to the lack of alternative public transport options, commuters in Laois and Offaly are reliant often on public car or on private cars and regularly use the M1, N4, the M4, M7 and M50 toll roads on their journeys to and from work, etc. These toll increases will place a further financial pressure on workers and families who already face very high petrol, fuel and diesel costs during the cost of living crisis. It's also going to hit the haulage sector very, very hard, and I've had hauliers raise this with me. The proposed increase will see toll charges on the N4, M7, M1 increased to €2.10 and the M50 an increase to a whopping €3.50. So people in South Laois travelling on a return journey, roughly 85 miles, to just north of Drogheda will pass through 6 tolls, costing them €15.40 per day. That's a heavy price to pay for commuters. 3 tolls to get from South Laois to just the other side of Drogheda. I've experienced that, and it's okay for me, but people who are on low wages are doing it, and it's a real problem for them. These toll increases follow a similar price hike back last January. in Sinn Féin's alternative budget, and we do put forward alternatives, and here it goes. We outlined a saving of 25.6 million could have been got by reducing the electric car grant cut-off point for cars valued from 60,000 brought down to 50,000. So in other words, only electric cars up to 50,000 in value will be subsidised. That would give you over 25 million, or an 18 million saving by taxing private jets. These options are still available to you, Minister, and to your government. Our proposal mandates the government to fully scrap the price hikes and not go ahead at all, either in January or in July.
Deputy Munster. Thank you, Deputy Stanley.
Minister, the government's 11th hour announcement is welcome, but let's be honest, you were forced to act. You had absolutely no intention of doing it if it wasn't for public backlash and political pressure. But this whole farce comes from the absolutely ridiculous contracts that were entered into by Fianna Fáil years ago. And I've been raising this issue here since I was elected in 2016, because Drogheda is the only town in Ireland with tolled slip roads, and that has had a detrimental effect on the town. You have to pay a toll to get from one side of the town to the other. To get from one retail park on one side of the town, you have to pay a toll to get to the other side. Otherwise, you spend 40 minutes in traffic because you have lorries, HGVs, vans all driving through the town to avoid the toll payments. And I've long campaigned for the removal of the slip road toll, but successive governments to date have done absolutely nothing about it. And it's clear from the responses that I've received over the years that the protection of the profits of these private companies is your government's main priority. You wouldn't even consider lifting the toll on the slip roads during Flackhole in Drogheda, because it would mean compensating the companies for their loss of profits as per their contracts. Working people don't get to demand pay increases due to inflation, but the government has ensured that these companies who operate these tolls can do just that. Celtic Roads Group operates the M1 motorway between Gormanstown, County Meath and Ballymascannon in County Louth. In 2021, a year when we had COVID-related travel restrictions, they reported a pre-tax profit of 8.14 million on this toll. 12 million vehicles passed through the plaza at Julianstown last year. Celtic Roads paid out dividends of 9.25 million to their shareholders last year. Their shareholders are the Semperian Group, a British-based asset management business, DIF Capital Partners, an infrastructure equity fund manager based in the Netherlands, as well as Royal BAM Group based in the Netherlands, and PGGM, which manages Dutch occupational pension funds. Celtic Roads and their shareholders are clearly not suffering financial hardship, which is more than can be said for many of those who pass through the toll every year. All we're asking for is the government stops the latest gouging on ordinary working people and not just kick it down the can. Give certainty to people.
Thank you. Deputy Mark Ward.
Minister, I want to thank my colleague Darren O'Rourke for bringing forward this motion to stop the hikes and tolls on our motorways. Sometimes I think the government are living under a rock when it comes to the cost of living crisis. The cost of living crisis is real. It's real to the people of my constituency who are making stark choices between eating and heating. The cost of living crisis is real to the many people who are going to be struggling this Christmas. But I am glad the government crawled out from underneath its rock and caved to the political and public pressure and announced the deferral of toll charges for 6 months, but it does not go far enough. The excuse that these increases are in line with inflation simply does not wash. Ordinary workers and families have not seen their wages rise with inflation. The M50 collected tolls of 140 million alone in 2021. So people who drive to work for a living or people who drive to work for a living or drive for a living are already impacted by these increases in the cost of petrol and the cost of diesel, and to put further increases on them was just unfair. I want to know who is in the driving seat. Is it the Department of Transport? Is it the Minister? Is it the National Transport Authority? Or is it the TII? Or is the Minister simply asleep at the wheel? Minister, workers in Liffey Valley have been adversely impacted by recommendations by the NTA and the TII by the introduction of car parking charges for workers. I supported these workers who were on strike since 16th of October. Information I received from South Dublin County Council stated that paid parking was a condition of planning requirement for the redevelopment of the car park in Liffey Valley. This condition of planning was strongly recommended by both the NTA and the TII during the planning process. In the same correspondence, South Dublin County Council says sustainable travel policies are aligned with that of the NTA and the TII, and therefore we are supportive of these reasonable travel costs, namely the introduction of paid parking at Limerick Valley. So whilst the imposition of car parking charges on workers by a vulture fund is reprehensible, government policies have allowed this to happen. We need a change of policy. Minister, we need a change of government.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Quinlivan.
Firstly, I want to welcome the government where they were forced into a U-turn on the proposed introduction of these charges. They've been deferred for 6 months, but they should be scrapped completely as there is no justification for them. The cost of living crisis is still with us, and it will be with us in June 2023. People from all walks of life are feeling the pinch. If it isn't extortion, high rents and food costs, it is electricity and gas costs, increased petrol prices and the battle against inflation. In the midst of this hardship people are facing, you want to increase the cost of road tolls. It has been suggested that this price hike is to ensure road maintenance, but it is evident it is more about allowing the operators to ensure their profits keep pace with inflation. The Taoiseach suggested that these are the first price increases in 9 years. Well, they aren't. In Limerick, we've had the Limerick Tunnel, and this is told. The price has already increased in the last 12 months. It went from €1.90 to €2. Even if people en masse decided not to use this tunnel, the operators still get paid through the traffic guarantee clauses. These ensure the taxpayers pay if an agreed upon number of vehicles don't use these roads. For Limerick Tunnel, that baseline is 17,000 vehicles per day. Indeed, in 2021, taxpayers paid €8.4 million to the operators of the Limerick Tunnel because of such a clause. For the period of June 2019 to June 2020, taxpayer paid €7 million because of these clauses. And as my colleague Darren O'Rourke said, over the course of the lifetime of this tunnel, we will pay €200 approximately of taxpayers' money to the operators. Each way the taxpayer and consumer lose. When Limerick Tunnel was built, the state was awash with money, so the Fianna Fáil government committed to just giving it away through these cowboy deals with road tunnel operators. Tolling the Limerick Tunnel or the M3 road never made sense, and taxpayers are left to foot the bill when these roads are underused. The government actually want people in Limerick and Clare to pay even more to use a route already has underlying problems. When the Limerick Tunnel was first proposed, I pointed out, as experts said, that it had fundamental flaws, the main one being that it was far too close to the city to be told to have the desired effect on city traffic. In Limerick City, one of the main traffic congestion points is Shannon Bridge on Dock Road. 15,000 plus cars use that route daily. The alternative is to use Limerick Tunnel. For years now, people have avoided this option as they don't want to pay the toll on the daily commute, and this was predicted. Limerick Tunnel was built too close to the city centre and has too high a charge for it to reach the maximum potential of removing traffic from the streets of Limerick.
Deputy O'Reilly.
Cathaoirleach. Minister, it's very clear, the message is loud and clear. Pressure works. You respond to pressure. You have responded to political pressure. As usual, lastminute.com is the order of the day with this government, but you have responded. Your response, as expected and predicted, is wholly inadequate, but nonetheless, the travelling public know that you felt their anger. I want to commend my colleague, Dr. Darren O'Rourke, for all of his work on this, and I want to also commend the travelling public for making sure their voice has been heard on this matter. But, Minister, we need to be very, very clear. Those people who have no alternative but to use the road and pay the toll will not be placated by you kicking the can down the road. Next summer, there will still be a cost of living crisis for commuters. And those people who are scratching out a living driving all day will still be experiencing a cost of doing business crisis. There's no crisis for the toll companies, as Dr. O'Rourke has highlighted very eloquently there. They seem to be doing very well for themselves, and it seems that perhaps that is all that matters to the government. And sure, why wouldn't they? Aren't they benefiting from a good old-fashioned Fianna Fáil deal? And we know those deals are rarely good for ordinary people or small businesses. Minister, kicking the can down the road serves to fool absolutely nobody. People see you, they see that you will respond to pressure, and next July, when you try it again, there will be the same amount of pressure. I'm not sure if it's that you don't understand when you say, members of your government say, well, sure, 10 cents isn't an awful lot of money. But when you have no choice but to use the toll road a couple of times a day, and again a few times a week, you add all of that up, and it is. And that dismissive attitude of people who are struggling, it's quite the signature thing of this government. And I think you will feel people's anger, because people who are struggling today will still be struggling next July. And Minister, we see whose side you're on. So these companies, you say they have to have cost of living, increases that match inflation. The 80-cent increase in the minimum wage doesn't match inflation. The CSO just released figures to show that people are not earning, that wages are not rising at the rate of inflation, and yet you want to protect these very well-off companies.
Deputy.
Look, it has been stated by some of my colleagues already that the problem here is we are starting from a bad place in relation to these PPPs that have not delivered for the people. They have certainly delivered for the companies. And yeah, like everyone else here, I welcome the fact that we have a mitigation, that we have delayed the toll increases till June 2023. And the fact is, we were dealing with a huge amount of people that were making contact with us as Deputy O'Rourke said, you're dealing with people who are paying multiple tolls each day as they travel for necessary dialysis and many other medical procedures. We are aware that haulage companies that are under severe pressure at this point in time, medium-sized haulage operators who are looking at, let's say, dealing with 3 or 4 tolls. They're talking about their cost, their toll costs, which would be in around somewhere between 100,000 and 130,000, would be going up by 20 to 30,000 euro. This is significant money, and I suppose the whole idea of tolls was also to free up traffic and also to pay for maintenance. Now, initially, when we were first told about tolls, as I say, with the East Link and the West Link, and before we had the incarnation of the M50, was the idea that these would be short-term fixes in relation to paying for itself. But obviously that has changed, and as everybody says, the difficulty is these PPPs that were negotiated did not deliver for people. Now, we can all talk about individual tolls. I will obviously talk about the M1. In fairness, Imelda Munster spoke about the difficulty in Drogheda in relation to the slip road and the huge cost that is and the impact it has on Drogheda. And here, like at this stage, because of the cost of tolls, we're dealing with a huge amount of hauliers and others that are going through the towns that were meant to be bypassed. And again, we haven't put together a sustainable means of actually delivering road maintenance, and we all know that the M50 is paying for that the people who are putting money into the M50 are paying for a considerable amount of road maintenance outside of the M50. But again, back to the M1, and I'll repeat that figure. It's 8.14 million last year's pre-tax profits for the Celtic Roads Group for the M1. Phenomenal money. And we really need a better, more sustainable solution. I could go on, but my time is up.
Minister, people are sick to the teeth of this government hiking prices left, right and centre. Ordinary people are sick of being at the bottom of the pile time and time again. Once again, this government are trying to sneak through measures that will even put more pressure on the pockets of ordinary people. We're talking about a counterbalance to Dublin, that Cork will be that counterbalance, but the reality is without public transport, we need connectivity. People coming from outside Cork have no way to access Dublin, no main roads, unless they're going through tolls. And vice versa, excuse me, and for Cork City, the only other way is to get the train and the high fares of travelling. And just to give you an idea, this weekend, if 2 people want to travel to Dublin, it's over €100. And that's to sit in the train with no refreshments because they've been suspended since the time of COVID. And a lot of people either don't have the money to pay for the train or can't afford. People are struggling to put petrol and diesel in their cars, and now this government is putting tolls up on top of it. We hear a lot of talk about the need for the carrot and stick approach. Well, if you're a developer or a landholder or people sitting on derelict sites, there's loads of carrots. but very little stick. There's a reward all the time, but for the friends of the government. But for ordinary people looking to travel around the state, there is only sticks. You're punishing ordinary people again when their bills have gone up, when people can't afford to put diesel or petrol in their car. So at what stage is the government going to say enough is enough for ordinary people? People who are in the eye of a cost of living storm at the moment, and this is what the government are doing. The increase will only add to inflation. People will have to pay more to travel. Haulage companies and businesses are all affected, but once again, the private companies and their profits continue to rise.
Jump the gun with you, Deputy. I'm sorry.
Toll roads and toll bridge over the Liffey operate as virtual monopolies. As Council impose restrictions on access to alternative routes or roads adjacent to toll roads, the more likelihood that the individual driver is going to be diverted by design to the toll road. The price increases don't appear substantial. They soon mount up as drivers make multiple trips over the course of a week, a month, a year. Price increases are happening across the board with the ongoing cost of living crisis. Drivers are struggling to pay for fuel. These increases will all hit already hard-hit motorists. For M50 tolls, the cost is due to increase by between 20 cents and 30 cents, depending on what method of payment you use. Those that have a tag on their car will see the toll cost rise from €2.10 to €2.30. The cost of a toll on unregistered cars will increase by 30 cents from $3.20 to $3.50, and the tolls for goods vehicles using the M50 will see a price rise of 20 cents and 60 cents per journey, depending on the size of the vehicle and the method of payment. I'd also like the Minister to look at the penalties that are imposed on drivers who, for whatever reason, miss a payment on a toll. These penalties rapidly escalate to exorbitant amounts being owed to the toll company. The 8 toll roads operated by public-private partnership companies will see toll costs increase to the maximum level. For example, the cost of a toll for a car using the M4 motorway will increase from €3 to $3.20. The other 7 toll roads will see a price increase of 10 cents more. People need their cars to get to work, and in Dublin, people definitely need them to get to industrial estates north and south of the city. Public transport will simply not work if you are travelling from the north side to industrial complex on the south side, and anyone who lives in Dublin knows this. So people are dependent on their cars to get to work, and their pay package decreases with every price increase. This toll increase is unnecessary, impractical, and is detrimental to the economic good of the city. Thank you.
With breaking news this afternoon on their deferral, it seems the bells have tolled on the toll increases, at least for now. On behalf of my constituents in Leixlip, Selbridge, Maynooth, Kilcock, Donadee, Broadford, and out the M4, I'd like to thank Teachta O'Rourke for the political pressure that this motion has brought to bear. But no harm to remind the public what this was all about. Just last week, the government was pretending that the toll increases was a surprise to them, but we found out then, subsequently, that they had knew since September. The Taoiseach told the Dáil there last week that there hadn't been an increase in tolls in 9 years, when it had already gone up in January of that year, so there can be no real room for surprised faces on this. These new hikes are not being leveraged to make the roads better. They were being leveraged to make better and bigger profits for private companies, because road transport, like all the other essentials and supposedly public aspects of life, like the buses, healthcare, childcare, elder care, have been engineered now just to become vehicles for private profit. It's perverse that we are trying to cut down road transport for the sake of climate, that some toll roads have guaranteed traffic clauses. That means that citizens' money has to be used to step in and pick up the tab when traffic is not deemed to be enough for these private company profits. Teachta O'Rourke has already mentioned the €8.4 million of taxpayers' hard-earned money in 2021 that went to the Limerick tunnel operator, and the M3 operator who got €3 million for their not enough traffic trouble during 2020, during the height of the pandemic. And although wages won't go up in line with inflation, these private toll operators' profits do. Why? Because, as Teachta O'Farrell has already outlined, the PPP contracts allow them to do that. And, we have huge concerns around them. It's nice work if you can get it when the government is so generous with private companies on the public's behalf. We want the hikes to take a hike because it is the commuter who cannot depend on the bus to get to work. They're the people who are paying. If the parent promised a free school place for their child to get to school but found out there was no place at all, it's the worker paying through the nose already for petrol and diesel and car insurance who will feel the hit and take the hit. But right now, toll increases are deferred, which is good, because people, I'll tell you, people, Minister, are punch drunk from paying out big money for the very basics, not just getting on.
Minister, whilst the 6-month delay will be welcomed by many people, it really is just kicking the can down the road. In fact, I think there's so many cans have been kicked down the road with this government, they'll make a fortune of the new cash for cans recycling measures when they come in 2024. Minister, the hikes, when they come, will hit people's pockets, hit the pockets of workers, of businesses, of families, at a time when the finances are already under unprecedented pressure due to the cost of living crisis. I'm glad that you have put a brake on them for the time being, but these unfair price hikes can and must be stopped for good. This is not a measure to help those toll road companies to pay the bills and increase in costs. This is about very profitable companies, and we've heard it time and time and time again how profitable these are, with the permission to state profiteering and price gouging. There will be other consequences also for the people of where I live in Dublin West, the people of Strawberry Beds, of Lucan, of Castleknock and Clonsilla, because it will mean heavier traffic as people try to save money by avoiding the tolls when the increases come in. The empty M3 will remain a virtual ghost road as people use the old N3 to avoid the price gouging. It will also impact on hauliers and increase transport costs and push up the price of food and other goods. So when we talk about the cost of living, this is the cost of living. Minister, one thing that really deeply frustrates people who use this road on a daily basis, who have to use these toll roads on a daily basis, are the fact that they pay their tax. They pay their road tax. Every year the bill comes in and they pay. And then they pay again and again and again every single day. So, the cost of living crisis is affecting so many workers and families and individuals. So, I'd appeal, give them that break. Not just a temporary break, but to give them a break and stop the road toll hikes into the future. Because what we have seen over the last number of years is these PPPs, these private...
This motion before the House this evening. This government needs to start standing up for the people who are in need of help when they need it. People are sick and tired of seeing government who just watches on as others take advantage of the people. You only respond in the interest of the public when pressure from the opposition or elsewhere becomes just too much to bear for you. We've seen this with your slowness on windfall taxes and decoupling gas from electricity prices, while energy providers have used the war to boost their massive profits. We've seen similar foot dragging from you when it came to implementing an eviction ban as people deal with the cost of living and the housing crisis throughout the winter. The Department of Transport were made aware of this planned toll hike in early September, and you did absolutely nothing, Minister, until you were faced with public opinion and emotion calling you out on your inaction. Then you announced a freeze on the incomes until next year. That's welcome for now. But what plans have you in place for next July? Are you going to let the toll companies have free rein again and hike their charges even further? It's another government-sponsored sticking plaster. What you need to do between now and then is to assess the funding for our roads network and review the value for money of the PPP contracts. In our alternative budget, we propose savings for next year by reducing the threshold of cars that qualify for EV grants from 60,000 to 50,000. Because, Minister, whether you like it or not, if you're ready to spend that much on a car, you don't need financial support. No more than you need a tax break for a private jet. This would have made space to deal with the cost of these toll hikes and would have saved you from your last-minute scrambling to see how the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform can find the money to fund your U-turn. And finally, is the temporary freezing of tolls meant to lessen the impact of your decision to reintroduce bonuses for senior bankers? Because I'll tell you one thing, I look forward to the day when we can shake off the damage done to us by decisions made by successive Fianna Fáil-led administrations, who, among other things, gift-plated, gold-plated contracts that permit these toll increases, and who now, with Fine Gael and Ye the Greens, want to reward senior bankers with outrageous bonuses while families are forced to tighten their belts even further.
And thanks to everyone who contributed to the debate. I think it was an important one. I think it was timely, and I think we saw some response from government in relation to this issue. But it is late in the first instance, and it doesn't go far enough in the second instance. Government knew that these proposed hikes were to come in January as far back as early September, and that is the time when a transport minister, in tune with the needs of people, with the lived experience of people, of small businesses, of people driving a van, trying to make ends meet, commuting in and out, up early in the morning, home late at night, in construction, in the trades, in whatever, in tune with the needs of haulage companies who technically he or she has responsibility for, in tune with the needs of haulage companies who would be faced with an €8 million bill if these proposed hikes came in. A minister in tune with the needs of people who have to commute for dialysis, for school, for work, for caring responsibilities, in the middle of a cost of living crisis and a cost of fuel crisis. A minister in tune with those needs, when notified of these proposed increases, would have said, no way, it cannot proceed, we have to find another way. And that didn't happen. And Minister, you've never said that. You've never at any stage, we heard it from other government party representatives, we've heard it from other government party leaders, but we've never heard it from you, Minister, with responsibility. Even tonight, we didn't, and I welcome the fact that you're in the chamber, but we didn't hear it from you. We heard in your deliberations that whatever about the tolls, we knew where the money wasn't coming from. It wasn't coming from public and active travel. After that, it was somebody else's problem. And the same tonight, Minister, in your contribution, you pointed towards measures government have taken. We support and have supported and have prepared policy documents asking you to, take different approaches and go further in relation to public transport and active travel. And we support it, and our representatives will help deliver it in local communities. But you cannot ignore the fact that you have a responsibility as Minister for the whole gambit that falls into transport. And very many people have no alternative. They don't have the alternative to switch to an EV, to switch to public transport, to switch to active travel. And you cannot ignore the plight of those people. And the fact that we've left it since the 1st of September to the back end, the 29th of November, to act on this tells me that this is a government and a ministry that is not in tune with the needs of people. And actually, the TII, as we speak, are down in the Transport Committee, and they're scratching their heads, wondering, can we get this done in time for the 1st of January? Because these are complex matters. There are, private contracts. There are a number of different parties. There's no guarantee. It will have to be negotiated out. What's the mechanism? And without a shadow of a doubt, if they were asked on the 1st of September to do it, they would have a better chance of delivering it on the 1st of January. So, Minister, I would encourage you to take this motion, to take the debate tonight, and to impress on the Department of Transport and on the TII and on those profitable private PPP companies to ensure that this measure is done for the 1st of January. And further, what we have said, Minister, you need to go further than that. The period of 6 months, it's not far enough. I would encourage you, Minister, in that period to look at the funding mechanism we have for our national roads network. It's clear, we've heard from the TII, that we invest about 2%. Significantly dependent, 33% of roads maintenance is dependent on tolls from the M50. Dependent on it. That's the scheme that we have built. PPP contracts, privatisation, failing to deliver on the responsibility of government through general taxation. It's a failed model that is crucifying ordinary people, and it needs to be addressed. And we also need a tolling scheme that incentivises the use of our roads in the most efficient way. So we have heavy goods vehicles, we have people in private cars avoiding the tolls, going on more minor roads, causing congestion, not efficiently using the network that we have, increased emissions, increased costs, increased congestion. It needs to be addressed, Minister, and you're the Minister with responsibility to do it. I don't have confidence that you'll do it, Minister, but surely you've heard loud and clear from the commuting public that it needs to be done. Gormil Mahagat.
Thanks very much, Deputy. I now put the question that the motion be agreed to. Agreed. Is it agreed? Agreed.